Hi dear students, good morning. Welcome back to our history class. Today we are continuing the chapter 9, the making of the national movement 1870 to 1947. In the last class, we have discussed about the emergence of nationalism, a nation in the making, freedom is our birthright. Okay, now let us continue the topic. Freedom is our birthright. In the 20th century, a group of Muslim landlords and Nawabs formed the All India Muslim League at Dhaka in 1906. Please look at picture. All India Muslim League. Okay, formation of All India Muslim League in 1906. The league supported the partition of Bengal. Okay, it desired separate electorates for the Muslims, a demand considered by the government in 1909. Some seats in the councils were now reserved for Muslims who would be elected by Muslim voters. Okay, this tempted politicians to gather a following by distributing favors to their own religious groups. Okay, meanwhile, the Congress split in 1907. The moderates were opposed to the use of boycott. They felt that it involved the use of force. After the split, the Congress came to be dominated by the moderates with Tilak's followers, Balagangadhar Tilak, functioning from outside. The two groups reunited in December 1915. Please listen. Then the two groups, moderate groups and extremist groups, reunited in December 1915. Next year, the Congress and the Muslim League signed the historic Lucknow Pact and decided to work together for representative government in the country. That means Lucknow Pact agreement made by the Indian National Congress headed by Balagangadhar Tilak and All India Muslim League led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah in 1916. The meeting at Lucknow marked the reunion of moderate and radical wings of the Congress. The pact deal with the structure of the relations of Hindu and Muslim communities. Understand? Next, the growth of mass nationalism. After 1919, the struggle against British rule gradually became a mass movement involving peasants, tribal students and women in large numbers and occasionally factory workers as well. Certain business groups too began to actively support the Congress in the 1920s. That means the growth of mass nationalism began to take place after 1990. Peasants, tribal students and women became involved in the struggle against the British rule. Understand? Certain business groups too began to actively support the Congress in the 1920s. Why was this so? Why? The First World War started in 1914 to 1918. Understand? As a result of this war, then in 1920, League of Nations formed for what? For international cooperation. Understand? The First World War altered the economic and political situation in India. First World War changed the economic and political situation in India. It led to a huge rise in the defense expenditure of the government of India. Understand? The government in turn increased taxes on individual incomes and business profits. Increased military expenditure and demands for war supplies led to a sharp rise in prices which created great difficulties for the common people. Then the war created a demand for industrial goods like jute, bags, clothes, rails, etc. and caused a decline of imports from other countries into India. Indian industries expanded during the war and Indian business groups began to demand greater opportunities for development. These are the First World War had the economic impact on India. As a result, Indian industries expanded during the war. Okay, the war also led the British to expand their army. Villages were pressurized to supply soldiers for an allied cause. That means villages were to act pressing to supply soldiers for an allied cause. A large number of soldiers were sent to serve abroad. Many returned after the war with an understanding of the ways in which imperialist powers were exploiting the peoples of Asia and Africa, and with a desire to oppose colonial rule in India. In 1917, there was a revolution in Russia, Russian Revolution. Okay, news about peasants and workers' struggles and ideas of socialism circulated widely, inspiring Indian nationalists. The advent of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi emerged as a mass leader. He was a mass leader. Okay, Gandhiji arrived in India in 1915 from South Africa, having led Indians in that country in non-violent marches against racist restrictions, against then discrimination of community. Okay, that was restricted. Okay, his South African campaigns had brought him in contact with various types of Indians, Hindus, Muslims, Parsis and Christians, Gujaratis, Tamils and North Indians, and upper class merchants, lawyers and workers. So, he was already a respected leader. Understand? He was known as an internationally respected leader. In 1895, along with other Indians, Mahatma Gandhi established the National Congress to fight against racial discrimination. Can you identify Gandhiji? Yes. Mahatma Gandhi spent his first year in India traveling throughout the country. For what? Understanding the people, their needs and the overall situation. Okay. His earliest interventions were in local movements in Champaran, Kheda and Ahmedabad, where he came into contact with Rajendra Prasad and Vallabhbhai Patel. Okay. In Ahmedabad, he led a successful mill workers' strike in 1980. We already learned that local movements in Champaran Satyagraha, then Kheda movement, Ahmedabad mill strike. Okay. Rowlatt Satyagraha. In 1919, Gandhiji gave a call for Satyagraha against the Rowlatt Act that the British had just passed. Okay. The act curbed fundamental rights such as the freedom of expression and strengthened police powers. The act controlled fundamental rights such as the freedom of expression and strengthened police powers. Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and others felt that the government had no right to restrict people's basic freedoms in this act. Okay. They criticized the act as what? Devilish and tyrannical. Okay. Devilish and tyrannical means devilish. Can you say Malayalam word of devilish? പൈശാചികവും tyrannical, സ്വേച്ഛാധിപത്യം എന്നും വിമർശിച്ചു. Okay. So, Gandhiji asked the Indian people to observe 6 April 1919 as a day of non-violent opposition to this act, as a day of humiliation and prayer and hartal or strike. Okay, as a result, then Satyagraha Sabha were set up to launch the movement, to form the movement. Okay. The Rowlatt Satyagraha turned out to be the first all-India struggle against the British government, although it was largely restricted to cities. Okay. In April 1919, there were a number of demonstrations and hartals in the country, and the government used brutal measures to suppress them. Brutality or crucial measures, okay, to suppress them. The Jallianwala Bagh atrocities inflicted by General Dyer in Amritsar on Baishagi Day, April 13, were a part of this repression. On learning about the massacre or Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Rabindranath Tagore expressed the pain and anger of the country by renouncing his knighthood. That means we already learned that Rowlatt Act and Jallianwala Bagh incident. Okay. According to this act, hartals and meetings were held all over the country. Okay. 13 April 1919 at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. The meeting was attended by hundreds of men, women, children. The British under General Dyer blocked the only exit and opened fire. Many people were killed. People were shocked at the brutality or cruelty of the British. Collect Satyagraha, the participants tried to ensure that Hindus and Muslims were united in the fight against the British rule. Okay, this was also the call of Mahatma Gandhi, who always saw India as a land of all the people who lived in the country. Okay, Hindus, Muslims, and those of other religions. He was keen that Hindus and Muslims support each other in any just cause. Khilafat agitation and non-cooperation movement. The Khilafat issue was one such cause. In 1920, the British imposed a harsh treaty on Turkish Sultan or Khalifa. People were furious about this as they had been about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre or Jallianwala Bagh incident. Okay. Also, Indian Muslims were keen that the Khalifa be allowed to retain control over Muslim sacred places in the erstwhile Ottoman Empire. Okay. The leaders of Khilafat agitations were Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Okay. Leaders, please note that leaders of the Khilafat agitation, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Okay, they wished to initiate a full-fledged non-cooperation movement. Understand? Gandhiji supported their call and urged the Congress to campaign against Punjab wrongs. Okay, then the Khilafat wrong and demand Swaraj. That means the Khilafat movement was an agitation by Indian Muslim allied with Indian nationalism in the years First World War. Okay, its aim was to put the British government to keep the Ottoman Sultan Caliph of Islam. It also known as Indian Muslim movement. Okay, the non-cooperation movement gained momentum through 1921-22. Thousands of students left government-controlled schools and colleges. Understand? Many lawyers such as Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, C. Rajagopalachari and Asaf Ali came up their practices. British titles were surrendered and legislatures boycotted. People lit public bonfire of foreign clothes. The imports of foreign clothes fell drastically or suddenly between 1920 and 22. Okay, but all this was merely the tip of the iceberg. Okay, the end of the iceberg. Large parts of the country were on the brink of a formidable revolt, corner of a formidable revolt. Okay, people's initiatives. Non-cooperation became non-violent in most of the places. Okay, some interpreted Gandhiji's message in their own ways. People's initiative were in Kedah, Petidar, peasants against highland revenue demand of the British. In Andhra and Tamil Nadu, liquor shops were picketed in Andhra and Tamil Nadu. Understand? Tribal and poor peasants started forest Satyagraha against new forest laws. In Sindh and Bengal, support Khilafat movement. Okay, the Khilafat non-cooperation alliance gave enormous communal unity and strength to the national movement. Understand? Then in Punjab, Sikh demanded to remove corrupt Mahants from Gurudwaras. Okay, this movement got closely identified with the non-cooperation movement. Okay, then in Assam, tea garden laborers demanded to increase wages. They shouting Gandhi Maharaj ki Jai. Okay, then as a result, Gandhiji referred as Gandhi Raja, the people's Mahatma. People thought of Gandhiji as a kind of Mishiha. Why? He could help them overcome their misery and poverty. Okay, Gandhiji wished to build class unity, not class conflict. Yet peasants could imagine that he would help them in their fight against Semindas and agricultural laborers. Believed he would provide them land. Okay. At times, ordinary people credited Gandhiji with their own achievements. For example, peasants of Pratapgarh in Uttar Pradesh, managed to stop illegal eviction of tenants. Illegal eviction of tenants means to put out of their home of renter by landlord. How? Illegal. Okay. But they felt it was Gandhiji who had won this demand for them. At other times, using Gandhiji's name, tribals and peasants outlook actions that did not conform to Gandhian ideals. Okay. The happenings of 1922 to 1929. What happened in 1922 between 1929? We know that Mahatma Gandhi was against violent movements. Okay, he suddenly called off the non-cooperation movement when in February 1922 a crowd of peasants set fire to a police station in Chauri Chaura, Uttar Pradesh. Okay, 22 policemen were killed on that day. The peasants were provoked. Peasants were irritated or unhappy. Why? The police had fired on their peaceful demonstration. Okay? They felt that the movement had gained in strength and would be very successful. But Gandhiji refused to change his decision. What was the policy of Gandhiji? The policy of Satyagraha based on truth and non-violence. Okay, he believed very strongly in the policy of non-violence. The non-cooperation movement was over. Okay, so Gandhiji's followers stressed that the International Congress must undertake constructive work in the rural areas. Other leaders such as Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru argued that the party should fight elections to the councils and enter them in order to influence government policies. Okay, through sincere social work in villages in the mid-1920s, the Gandhians were able to extend their support base. This proved to be very useful to launching the civil disobedience movement in 1930. Two important developments of the mid-1920s were the formation of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh (RSS), a Hindu organization, and the Communist Party of India. Okay, these were formed. Okay, these parties have held very different ideas about the kind of country India. Okay, Bhagat Singh was active revolutionary nationalist in this period. At that time, the British realized that they needed to introduce some changes in the administration of India. In 1927, the British government in England decided to send a commission headed by Lord Simon to decide India's political future. Okay, please let's see picture. Demonstrators opposed the Simon Commission. Okay, the commission had no Indian representative. The decision created an outrage in India. Okay, all political groups decided to boycott the commission. When the commission arrived, it was met with demonstrations with banners saying Simon go back. The Indian people greeted the commission with black flags and shouted Simon go back. Why? The commission did not have any Indian in it. Understand? Bhagat Singh was a nationalist revolutionary leader in this period. Okay, please listen. Then it takes a loud voice to make the deaf hear Inqilab Zindabad. Okay, revolutionary nationalists such as Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Sukhdev and others wanted to fight against the colonial rule and the rich exploiting classes through a revolution of workers and peasants. Okay. On 8 April 1929, Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt threw a bomb in the Central Legislative Assembly. Okay, the aim, what is the aim? Their leaflet explained was not to kill, but to make the deaf hear. Okay, and to remind the foreign government of its scholars' exploitation. Okay, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru were executed on March 23, 1931. Bhagat Singh's age at that time was only 1923. Okay. The decade closed with the Congress resolving to fight for Purna Swaraj or complete independence in 1929 under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru. As a result of Independence Day was observed on 26 January 1930 all over the country. Was observed. Okay. Dear students, read the lesson carefully. Thank you.